So, okay, sorry, 1 second. Oopsie. Yeah. So, what is biomimicry? I don't know if, because I cannot see you, and I was going to ask if you know how the word, what does the word mean? But as you can assume, it comes from ancient Greek word, which is bios, and which, okay, 1 second. Yeah, let me move this one here. Which means life, and mimesis, which means to imitate or to copy. And if you put those two words together, it means how you can mimic nature and life. So what is it? Basically, it's a practice that learns and mimics nature and tries to solve human design challenges and find hope along the way. And that is a quote that I borrowed from the Biomimicry Institute. So there are 3 types of biomimicry. One, the simplest one, is the one that it copies the form or a shape that you find in nature. Either it is animal, it is plant, or anything in nature. The second one, that is it is a copying of a process like photosynthesis or even more complex processes. And the third one, it's on a bigger scale, and it's mimicking at an ecosystems level, like building a nature-inspired city. So the way it's been structured, I'm gonna give a sample for different categories. So from the biomimicry was always fascinating and has always inspired people throughout the centuries. What you see here in the 2 images, on the left-hand side is the Nautilus shell, and then on the right-hand side is the staircase in the Arc de Triomphe, so in Paris, so which was built back in the Napoleonic time. So, and when did it all started? So there are loads of histories out there, you know, saying when did it start. So I'm just gonna make a starting point for this presentation from the Egyptian pyramids. So there are so many stories about the pyramids, who did it or how they were built, but one of believable, let's say, stories is that they imitate the mountains, and that's where the shape comes from. And next one, about 4,000 years ago, it's about the umbrella, and that was in China. And the guy who invented the Chinese umbrella, he did it by observing the children that they were carrying the lotus leaf, trying to shield themselves from the rain. So he got inspired by the flexibility and the lightweight of the leaf, and he wanted to interpret it in on its own way to create his own product. And the first umbrella that was built back then by this guy, it was made out of silk. Another example throughout the centuries is in ancient Greece, and the story of Icarus and Daedalus, which is the son and the father, that they were imprisoned in Crete, in the island of Crete. So Daedalus, who was an engineer himself, he came up with the idea for their escape to mimic the birds. So basically he manufactured wings made out of feathers, and in order to put them together, he used wax. So he asked his son Icarus, when he put the wings on, not to go too close to the sun because of the wax. But Icarus didn't listen to his dad, and he fell into his death because he went too close to the sun, and the sun melted the wax. But the whole idea is that they were inspired by the birds. And in the medieval times, Leonardo da Vinci, he was really fascinated, and there are numerous of sketches of the bone structure of birds and also of bats, and that they were informing his flying machines. And a bit more recent, history is the Velcro, which I'm going to talk, it's one of the examples I'm going to give. So I'll talk about it in a detail. And then in the 1990s is the bullet train in Japan. So the previous version, let's say, of the bullet train, it was making too much noise when it was going through the tunnel. So there was a boom sound, and the neighbors around the tunnels, they were complaining that they cannot put up with this noise. So the chief engineer came up to the solution by observing one of his hobbies, basically, which was the kingfisher. And the kingfisher is a kind of a small bird, but it has a big beak. And he was observing how the kingfisher goes into the sea to get its prey. So when he was in the redesign process, he took this on board, the shape of the head of the kingfisher, to solve the problem of the front of the train. And it was a success. And the whole, because then it was cutting through the sound rather than making this awful sound. So the neighbors, they didn't complain. The next one is it's an architectural example. It's a building in Zimbabwe. It's the Eastgate Center. So this one imitates it's a functional way of how the termite mounts work. So with and the whole idea behind it is to open and close the building and the openings depending on the amount of air and ventilation they need in the building. It's a shopping mall and an office. So, and the way it's been designed, the energy savings are amazing, and it only consumes about 10% of what another building of the same size and the same location would consume. And a most recent one is about the circular economy and the biomimicry and how it has informed it. But again, this is something that Kleopatra is going to take you through. So I'm just going to leave it here just as a concept. So the first one is for the product design, Velcro. So that was a total accidental innovation, let's say. And this Swiss engineer, when he was walking in the Swiss Alps, he just noticed that after their hunting and everything, these small bears, they were stuck into the clothes and into his clothes and the fur of his dogs. And that is the whole idea about this specific seed. It is supposed to stack because it is supposed to stack so that it can travel long distances before germinating. So then it can spread into a wider area. So George the Menstrual, what he did was to try to study why this is happening. And then he realized that there are lots of hooks on this plant. So, and that what gave him the idea of course, many attempts to try to master it, of what we have the Velcro now, which is about the hooks on one side and the loops on the other side and how they come together and how many applications it has resolved, this Velcro nowadays. And the next one is again a product, but more for the interior design. So this is a sofa that the designer is calling it Sofa So Good, and it's been inspired. So this one, it basically mimics this product, both the shape and also the mechanisms of nature. And these are the silkworm cocoons and the spider webs. So it does look like a cocoon, and it's very nice apparently to sit there. But at the same time, it's a very strong structure and very lightweight. So the whole engineering of the web is into place. It is also a 3D printed product, and it has used about 60,000 layers of resin material, which makes it very, very strong. The more the layers, the stronger the product, but at the same time, very light. Next one is a sampling for architecture. So And this one is, there are loads of examples out there, but I just picked the one that it's close to here to Dubai, and it's the Burj Khalifa. Probably most of you know or have heard that the tower's design was inspired by regional desert flower, which is called the spider lily, and is known for its long petals that it exceeds its core. So as you can see in the two images, on the left being the spider lily, and then on the right, on the top of the Burj Khalifa, it kind of imitates this sort of idea. Next one, again on architecture, but it's more on the facade, is a solar leaf bioreactive facade, which was it was a pilot project in Germany in 2013. So these vertical facades, it's like a double skin facade basically. They have algae in one layer. So basically they generate renewable energy from the biomass from algae and solar thermal heat. And also because they're on the outer layer of the building, they also act as a shading device, which is a dynamic shading, because the more daylight available, the more the algae grows and the more the shading is the benefit. It was a combination, collaboration of in the industry, this project between Arab, which is an engineering company, the Science Consult of Germany, and Cold International. So it just shows that when there is a collaboration, we can have quite amazing things in engineering. On a similar note is but more recent, is Biotech Playground. This playground is located in Poland, in Warsaw, and it's one of the most polluted cities in Europe, Warsaw. So the designers, they wanted to solve this problem by using, again, the mechanics behind the algae to create air purifier for this children's playground. So in order to operate these tubes in the facade, they're using two sources of energy. This is the solar energy and the kids' kinetics, because they have these bubbles on the ground where the kids step on it and they operate. It's a fantastic, fantastic project. So I'll show you the video and I hope you will enjoy it as much as I do, because I just love this one. One second. Yeah. I hope you can all see it. Yeah, 1 second. Yes, so that was about the playground. I hope you enjoyed it. And the next application is on the construction industry, about the 3D printing and how we can use biomimicry to imitate or solve some of the issues. So I'm not sure if you're all aware about it, but now it's a big discussion in the construction industry where I come from. as for the 3D printing, as it reduces the cost quite a lot. It's a very sustainable, less waste. So there are lots of good things about 3D printing, but still it's a new technology and there are quite a few unsolved elements to it. So in principle, that's why I've put it there. The 3D printing uses what you find in nature, which is the layering, like the abalone cell, which is all about laying materials one on top of the other, additive printing. The only issue at the moment, as it's a kind of new technology, is that the materials that it's been used, they could be, and the glues, they are not the most healthy ones, let's say. So maybe there is a potential that we can find a solution by looking in the nature's 3D printers, which is the web, the spider, and the silkworm, and try to be inspired of how they do it. So, and I have borrowed this quote from Janine Benius, who is one of the ambassadors and founders of the biomimicry in the US. So, because nature uses life-friendly chemistry, which is non-toxic and water-based, and which does not require high heat, because the 3D printing at the moment does require high heat during the production. So, a next application of biomimicry, it's on the installation level. And again, I'm going to borrow one of the most recent examples. I don't know whether you've been to the expo, but in the sustainability pavilion outside, they have the energy trees. So there are about 18 of those, and the whole idea is that they provide the shading and they mimic as well the shape of a regional tree, the Gulf tree, and they also generate electricity because they have PVs on the top. And the next one is about the circular economy. It's an old project that it happened in 2003 that they were calling it From Cardboard to Caviar. And it's quite fascinating. It was in the UK. So, and it just shows how the loop is closed and there is no waste, there is nothing, because that's the whole idea. I mean, Kleopatra is going to talk to you about the circular economy, and the biomimicry is just an introduction, this project. There is no waste in the natural way of how life out there happens. So in this project, they had the waste cardboard boxes from local businesses that they were shredded, and then they were given to the farms in order to be used as horse bedding. And then when the stables were cleaned out, this waste was fed into the worms. And then these worms, that they were quite fat, they were fed to the sturgeon, which was producing the caviar. So it just shows how beautiful nature is being done. So I'm going to pass you over to Kleopatra about the circular economy and how it can connect with the biomimicry.
Hello, thank you, Eirini. Well said. Thank you as well, the organizers from Dubai Nature History Group that connect us all, Valerie, Alex, Eirini, Gary, everybody. My name is Kleopatra Alamantariotou. I'm the founder of Biomimicry Greece and also the movement for Biomimicry for Humanity. Before I start about circular economy and biomimicry, I would like to tell you that 10 years ago, I used to live in Dubai, so I miss nature. So I found nature in Dubai desert that is very beautiful and peaceful. And during our life, we are trying to have nature as mentor because it has wisdom, and also nature has beauty. If we dive deep into beauty, we can see the patterns and shapes behind even the Dubai desert, behind a flower is a beauty, a sacred geometry and mathematics, and all these shapes has a codes. So when we see beauty, we connect deep with ourselves. So this is what happened to me. I see beauty and I connect deep with ourselves. If we lose beauty, we lose the deep meaning of life and our existence. Beauty reminds us about the reason why we live and why we exist, and how to connect to ourselves, to nature, to other people, even to the stars. And it's amazing that we need to understand that everything is connected and we are all connected. So now we have to explain to you about how circular economy and biomimicry connect. And by circular economy is a biomimetic framework. It's a system, and we are trying to mimic the system of nature. So what we normally, everybody of us is doing, just we buy something, you know, materials, everything, even from the supermarket, we use it and then we waste it. This model cannot work anymore, because everything is not for, it doesn't exist for you know, for an infinity. So we need to use everything wisely. So we need to move from the linear economy to the circular economy. So the circular economy, it says we have to take a product, use it, and then not to put it back to the environment and create pollution or any other problems. We need to reuse this material. Even if it is food or even if it is raw materials, we can recycle it, we can repair it, or we can use it for the next 10 years to find models and new ways to use it for the next years. And then the next slide, please. I think we have some examples in order to understand what happened in the years to come. Circular economy starts from Ellen MacArthur. She was a sailor, like all of you. I heard from the team that some of you are doing sailing. She was sailing in the middle of the sea, and she realized she couldn't, you know, she couldn't use all the materials forever because she was in the middle of the sea. So she has to use circularity. So when she go back after sailing, she started thinking about that. So she created the circular economy model. And all the movement, Ellen MacArthur circular economy. So here we have some examples about IKEA, Second Life. It's a company, everybody knows it, that when some materials is not, you know, correct, some furniture has a damage, is not going to throw it back to nature or to the environment, repair those furnitures, and then they can sell it cheap as a second life. And this movement is going very good in some countries. And the other example is from a company, a German company, Loeffler, that I find it very interesting, that they make this kind of office chairs. They sell it quite expensive, but they say that they guarantee that this chair is going to live for 30 years. So they give you a guarantee for 30 years. So they don't care to sell thousands of chairs. They want to sell something very valuable for the good product. Next slide, please. Sorry, I cannot. Yes. So after the last years, especially after 2015 in Europe, they were trying very hard, all European countries, to create circular cities and also to have strategies in circular economy. Also in Dubai, and even the government, they have a strategy, and also they have an action plan that starts the last years. So I think it's at the beginning, but it's going very well. So circular cities, it's cities that they are sustainable cities, that they use in solar glasses, they use sustainability, how to create food, how to live with the quality of life. And this is an example from region villages in Holland, that this model they're trying to promote it to the other countries. Yes. Before we close, Eirini was in charge for City Nature Challenge in Dubai. It was a global movement, and I was in charge for City Nature Challenge in some other cities and in Athens. It's a global movement that starts from the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles, and also National Geographic. It's part of the team. So what they're trying to do is to observe, to put nature and community people from every country to observe nature and take photos and then upload it on the platform. This movement starts in 2016. It's growing, and hopefully next year Eirini is starting to raise awareness to the UAE and Dubai, and in order to get involved more people in on those actions, and also to observe and see beauty in Dubai, and to upload all these strange photos, and more people can see. Also, we are part of Biomimicry for Humanity, Eirini, and it's also a team member of Biomimicry for Humanity. We created through a European project. I'm the founder of that, and we are trying to raise awareness to more people how to reimagine humanity and our planet, to find solutions to global challenges and problems, and to take actions, because we cannot be pathetic anymore to what happened to nature and environment. Also, our goal is to create more projects like nature-based solution projects, solar industry projects, circular economy, and biomimicry startups, and also to raise awareness to more people to understand that every species has a reason to exist, so everybody is valuable in this planet. Also, with Biomimicry, we want to teach people to design with new mindfulness design, with responsibility, with the circular economy model responsibility as well. We need to analyze all these ideas and strategies and find solutions in every problem that human has or every city. And before I finish, nature has an intelligence more than 3.8 years, billion of years. So we need to use this intelligence if we want to be wise like nature, and also to keep her as a mentor before we design, think, or act. And thank you again. I hope you enjoy it, and thank you, Eirini, that connect us all, and the organizers.
Yeah, so thank you, Kleopatra. And that brings us to the Q&A. If there are any questions for us, please let us know. Am I supposed to see the question somewhere? Because, wait. Hello? Oh, wait.
Hi, Eirini.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Michelle. Yeah.
Leslie mentioned something about he mentioned about, have you heard about 3D printing as a potential way of recycling used plastics? And he was also asking about a sonic boom.
Hold on. Have heard about 3D printing as a potential way of recycling used plastics. I'm not aware of this one, to be honest. To use it, you mean as a material, right? Yeah. In the machine, that's what you feed in, the recycled plastic, in order to build something out of it.
I know, for example, at the one and only Royal Mirage, not the one and only Royal Mirage, their boutique hotel on the Palm, all their gangways are made, looks like wood, but they're actually made from recycled plastic. So they're making a lot of sort of planks that look like wood, but it's actually recycled plastic. They're using it quite widely in Dubai. Angela Manthorpe says, can you please go back to the links of the last page so that people can take a look at them?
Yeah,
we gave
sure.
a whole lot of links.
Yep. For sunglasses using used ground coffee. Oh, wow. I'll Google this one. I didn't know about that. For the sunglasses.
Okay. I don't know any, has anybody got any other questions? I haven't seen anything else coming through. You can see it in the chat, Eirini.
Yeah, okay. 1 second.
I don't see any.
So, thanks so much. Can you please discuss how biomimicry and circular economy correlate with climate crisis?
Yes, because we want to create, for instance, we can create a lot of materials that protect fluid or protect from fires, that circulate. It's materials that protect the environment. And now there are a lot of companies that are trying to create a lot of startups and a lot of actions in climate change. And also a lot of organizations are trying very hard for that. The thing is, they're trying to create new models. At the moment, there are about 4 million business circular economy models, and there is massive actions until 2030, as we need to make a lot of things in order, to save the planet and also to prevent from climate change. From nature-based solutions, a lot of action with nature-based solutions and climate change. You can check. I think we don't have a reference here, but we can share it to you by email if you wish.
Yeah, that would be good. I think you could share that with us, and then we could send it on to the group. I could let Valerie share it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Stephen Alendis says, have you heard of alternative materials other than fossil fuels as a basis for plastic used? I don't know. I'm not aware of any.
In alternative materials other than fossil fuels instead of, let's say, for recycled plastic, for, let's say, the tires. So things that you can do with plastic, but you are not using plastic. There is a big thing about the tires at the moment. I was watching another video from the World Economic Forum earlier, and in Nigeria, apparently they have done this amazing initiative that they are recycling, I don't know how many thousands of tires, and they're producing elements that it looks like plastic, but it's not plastic, but it's instead of plastic and other uses. They also use it for children's playground and for under the surfaces for the infrastructure work, for the beddings and everything. So you don't necessarily have to see all of them. Is this what we are, what is this question about?
It might be other alternatives to the fuel industry.
Like renewable energy, or you see with the with the Zoom, you don't have this connectivity with whoever has the question.
Yeah. Okay, the next one is 3D printing. There is a building next to Dubai Emirates Tower that's 3D printed. These comments are from Alexis. Alexis says there's a building next to...
Yeah, it's the first one that was built. It's fantastic, this foundation there. Yeah, so Dubai, and they are also targets for Dubai. For the 3D printing, they have published their targets of how much of their construction they want it to be 3D. So, but the only issue with not only issue, there are other issues as well, but one of the issues is the glues and how you bring everything together. So that's why I wanted to make a point of it, that maybe since it's at its early stages, we can experiment a bit by learning from nature so that they're non-toxic and a bit more healthier alternatives rather than the resins and everything that it's been used at the moment.
And then again, coming from Stephen Alendi, says the idea of moving away from disposability and waste as the worst aspect of recent society. Anything used should have a further life as another usage instead of going to a landfill where it just sits unchanged for decades and centuries.
And yeah, 100%. And not only that, especially with the tires, just because I mentioned it before, it's in climates like Nigeria, well, hot climates, it's a big risk for fires as well. When you're disposing them like that, the tires and the materials they're out of, that they're made out of, they're easily too inflammable. And the toxins that they're going to release in the environment and the pollution is out of this world. So it's a bit more complex, the problem of so much waste around us.
Yeah, and then from Alexis, he says, recycling used plastic bottles into which recycling the box crushes into very fine glass, which can be used as an alternative to sand in certain construction building acts.
Yeah. And also with the recycling glass bottles, you can also make, you can reuse some of the glass bottles as well, you know. So I have seen some amazing screens for design, from a design aspect, you know, as an interior element, that you can make some very nice screens out of it. Just needs a bit of imagination and everything. So yeah, Alexis is very much into it.
Yeah, and then we had Stephen Allen having the 3D printing that was, I think there's been hemp-based suggested.
It has been, sorry, what?
Hemp, I don't think hemp-based suggested. I'm not quite sure what he...
Not too sure if, yeah,
and
I
then
don't know.
Strakesmar said this was an extremely interesting and an eye-opener for me. You mentioned the Burj Khalifa as an example out of interest. What other kind of buildings here have a similar concept using nature for design other than metro stations?
Let's say architecturally, let's say Gaudi. I just try to think of something that most of the people will know. You know Gaudi, the Spanish architect with the Sagrada Familia, and
yeah.
So he was inspired by nature. Also, another Spanish, Santiago Calatrava. He's also inspired by birds and the wings and the mechanics behind it to representing the buildings. Other ones, let me think, that come into mind. I have to think, but I can share, if you want, I can share some links with buildings that they have been inspired by nature, as far as the shape is concerned.
Okay, I'm going to bring Stephen Allende on because he's got a really long question, and maybe Stephen, I've unmuted you. I've asked you to unmute yourself. Maybe you can ask this about other sources of plastic. I don't think he's heard. Because Stephen said, I'm sorry, talking about sources for plastic other than the traditional fossil fuels, which have created so much waste. I heard hemp as a potential alternative source and think other things have also been suggested. So you haven't heard of the usage of hemp?
I haven't, no.
Okay.
Sorry.
But if he has, then definitely must be out there. I will Google it.
Right. I'm thinking, like, can you hear me now? Sorry, I just had to plug my webcam in.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going off the top of my head. I thought I'd heard this a few months ago. I certainly heard about the recycling plastic thing in a 3D workshop like I was at like last year. And it sounded like it was a good way of doing things, actually taking pre-made plastics, breaking them back down into component forms, then making the 3D twine back out of that. So you'd wind up printing material that had been pre-used. I'm not the expert on this, so like I don't know how clean the end result was, but it sounded like it was something that people like who were running that workshop had suggested was a viable process. And it sounds like a great way of getting rid of like so much of the plastic. Like, I mean, hearing so much over the last few years of where plastic has gone, what damage it's doing to the environment. So if you have got a way of breaking it down and reusing it in this way, it would be so useful. Also, the idea of returning to reusing containers, like I think like when I was very small, like the milkman brought a glass bottle of milk around to the doorstep and picked that glass bottle up again. It was refilled and reused for somebody else. That whole idea of getting away from one-use plastic would be so useful, and totally get away from the idea of landfill, like you use one thing once and then you bury it in the countryside. It's not a useful way of doing things.
Yeah.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing. I didn't know about that, about the hemp and the 3D printing, but now that you mentioned it, I will Google it. And thank you so much for sharing it, because it seems that they have started, you know, a bit of experiments, not going to the more toxic materials, but try to reuse and everything. And also now that you say about hemp and bamboo, you must have seen, you know, as well, you know, lots of cutleries and dishes and everything, you know, they're trying to reuse also fabrics, towels and clothes.
Yeah,
they do have
that was another thing I was going to say, like fast fashion, like getting away from the idea of disposable fashion. The idea that I put forward in that, like you always have a secondary use for any item you use. So like you have initial use of fabric as whatever item of clothing, then it becomes patching, then it becomes rag, then it becomes whatever. So it's been used to the point that it's actually falling apart rather than it getting used and then just being disposed of.
Yes, and actually, you know, that's what H&M now, they have put this initiative on, and another brand, I don't know, brand anyway, it's in the UK, the Primark, you know, which is the most most fast fashion, you know, I have ever seen. And, you know, although that's their model, at the same time, in order to balance it out, they try to do the same sort of what you just described. So if you have an old garment or something is not working, you can take it back to them, and then they're gonna find another use, or they will fix it, or, you know, they just try to be into this sort of philosophy that the garment is not gonna end up in the landfill, but they will find another use for it, you know, to fix it. And also for the plastic bottles, I don't know whether you know about this company here in Dubai, that they are recycling plastic bottles and they make it
Sports
t-shirts.
Yeah, t-shirts.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, they make the yarn, and then they can do any sort of towels, dresses, t-shirts, and they're based here in Dubai.
Yeah, now there's another thing, just let me come in here. Heidi Streeksmasters in the Netherlands, they have started making handbags from discarded avocados that would have otherwise been thrown away. And then I've asked Angela to unmute because she came up with something about a building. Angela, have you unmuted?
I don't really have much more to add than my comment, Michelle, which was that a few years ago, I saw a fascinating presentation on the walls at Emirates Palace from Zaha Hadid, in which she had taken inspiration from nature for some of her building designs. I don't know if the audience is familiar with Zaha's building designs, but some of them are very imaginative, and I just it really struck me, her presentation at the time, you know, in which she was looking at layering the outside of buildings and using nature for inspiration. But I haven't got really anything more than that to add.
Yeah, no, Zaha is a legend. The way, you know, she was doing her designs, you know, it was like one and only, you know, very, very, very beautiful things. I cannot think of something that comes to my head, you know, that it mimics exactly a form of nature, but I'm sure she does, because they were very aerodynamic sort of shapes. So, and she was very intellectual in the way she was designing. So I'm sure in her processes and everything, she must have had my biomimicry, you know, underlying her designs.
Okay, I've just asked Alexis to unmute because he has something to say. And then I will hand after Alexis, Gary, and then Valerie. And then I think we'll bring it to an end. Alexis, you had some comments in the question. You had something to say.
So yes, all right. Come back to me. Right. No, the problem is I've got two machines connected to this presentation. So let me use just one device. My comment was going to be twofold. One was on the topic of mangoes being used to make fruit leather, which is then it's been specially treated in the Netherlands, and I shared some links on the chat. It's been used to make actually quite robust leather goods, bags or other items. And it's actually a very interesting process that they go through. So it's well worth, I think, clicking through on the first link. And then on 3D printing, given the comments, questions made earlier, actually the reuse of plastics is almost trivial for certain uses of 3D printing. You can chip up, so cut up the plastic, certain types of plastic, and then pass that through an extruder, heat applied. And it's something which some of the home DIY 3D printing is capable of doing. So you can push into your 3D printer your plastic at home. You need to select the plastic because not all plastic will deform well under heat. Certain ones will need different levels of heat. And then of course the use of the 3D printing will differ. Your needs will implicate your choice of plastic. But yeah, just to say that there are quite a lot of reuses for plastic. I mentioned earlier one for glass. And one of the things with the glass comment I posted was the use of space for recycling bottles and the weight of those items makes it incredibly costly if you want to do it. And if you can find a nearby use for the salt-like output, it's fantastic. So you can collect a lot more glass in that receptacle, but also you can put it to immediate use in the construction industry. There you go. That was my input.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alexis.
And then I think finally Gary had something to say as well. Gary? We have to get...
Yeah, you put me on the spot so that whether I have something to say or not, I will say something. Number one is that listening to all of this, I feel embarrassed because I had my morning coffee from the machine that uses those little Keurig cups, which are notoriously environmentally unfriendly. It's a legacy here in New York from my mother. The second is that we seem to have morphed a little bit in the end of the discussion from biomimicry to conservation. And that's certainly one of the important uses of biomimicry, but it's not, but biomimicry per se doesn't have to be environmentally friendly. I go back to the initial slide showing the woodpecker and the hammer handle, and if you continue to make the hammer handle, no matter how you shape it, if you continue to make it out of metals and so on, it's going to use a lot of energy and not necessarily be environmentally friendly. Although a good, my original geologic hammer lasted me about 45 years. So, and even then the hammer is still good. It was the leather hand wrapping that came off. So there's a connection between biomimicry and conservation, but not a necessary one. The practical aspects of how nature did things are intriguing for their own sake. And of course, we all know that nature didn't necessarily do things in the most efficient way. One reason we have in our hands the number of bones we have in our hands and wrists and so on is because that's the number of bones that the first fish that slopped its way up out of the mud and on land had in its four appendages. But anyway, This was, thank you all for an extremely interesting and thought-provoking presentation. And I guess with that, I'm going to turn you back over to Valerie. It's nice to be able to participate from around the world.
Thank you, Gary. Valerie, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you both very much, Cleopatra and Eirini. It was most excellent lecture and very interesting, really worth listening to. So thank you very much again for putting it all together. Everybody's enjoyed it with so many questions. Just to remind people, everyone, about the November lecture on the 7th of November, which in fact, if I read it out to you, is surviving ingenious strategies without legs. Plants tackle this by adopting ingenious strategies to survive. So with that, thank you once again to our speakers, and we'll look forward to seeing you all again in November.
Thank you so much for having us, and we really enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eirini. Thank you, Cleopatra. I'm going to bring the meeting to an end now.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, thanks so much.
Bye.
Everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Good night.